Hello, friends. Welcome to this live stream about historic reflections. And as you know, that the subject of this stream is about certain fraudulent schemes. And as you know, that there are so many schemes which can take your money, and everybody is very concerned about such things. Therefore, it is important for us to understand the history and also understand how you can see such schemes being offered upfront, so that you know that you can not fall prey to such schemes. So there is one incident which I want to talk about, and that is so that there is a historic relevance and how these schemes started in the first place. And as you know that in English, these fraudulent schemes are also known as Ponzi schemes. Ponzi, Ponzi schemes. So, believe it or not, the Ponzi is a name of a person. So, I will tell you exactly how this Ponzi schemes operate, who basically came out with these ideas, and why such fraudulent schemes are called Ponzi schemes. So, let's understand this first. Now, believe it or not, Ponzi schemes is basically named after this person, Carlo Ponzi. He had a very long name, and as you can see, he's now famous or infamous as swindler and con artist. That is his qualification, as you can speak. Say that. And since he's an Italian, Carlo Ponzi is his name. Carlo basically in Italian is equivalent to Charles. So while he was in Italy, he was known as Carlo, and he belonged to an affluent family. His background was quite a famous family in Italy. However, they lost all the money, and they were not very well to do. So what did Carlo do? And Carlo was very ambitious, and he also, he had this imagination in his mind that he belonged to a rich family without any money. So obviously he was in it, trying to swim in the troubled water. So what happened with him? He actually created scheme for the very first time, and he promised his client 50% profit within 45 days, or 100% profit within 90 days. So if you invest your money for just 90 days, you can double your money in 3 months. That is the kind of scheme this guy offered, and this scheme was actually operated in the United States. And when he migrated to US, he was known as Charles, because Carlo in Italian is the same as Charles in English. So his name was changed from Carlo Ponzi to Charles Ponzi in the US. However, please note, this was his scheme. Who doesn't want such a scheme? You double your money in 90 days and 50% in 45 days. So you have nothing to lose. So you can try small bit whether the money doubles, and see exactly how it works. So a lot of people got lured into this, and I will tell you exactly what happened, what was the scheme all about, what is the history of Charles Ponzi, how he got the idea of creating the world first Ponzi scheme, which is also infamously or famously named after him.
First of all, you have selected a very nice and out of the box topic today. But at the same time, I just want to know that this Charles Ponzi was the only first person in the world who has come out like a scheme where we are making 100% out of within 90 days. And that is quite exciting because everybody wants that kind of scheme. But my question is, was he first one to really come out with this kind of options, this kind of offerings for people?
Well, friends, Kanchan, she is moderating today, and question is very, very interesting. Believe it or not, Charles Ponzi was not the first one to launch such a scheme. There were several before him, but Charles Ponzi was the most successful one. and as you know, in the beginning, I said that he's infamously now famous as swindler and con artist. So he was able to con millions of people, millions of dollars. So that is why he is remembered, and because of his involvement in such uh, pyramid schemes, he found the loophole in the legal system, and he was able to con not only small people but lot of famous people. I will tell you all about all this. So Kanchan, thank you for asking this question, but he was not the first one. He was just the most popular one. He was able to swindle the highest amount of money from others. All right, so let's talk about Charles Ponzi. He was born in a town in Lugo in Italy on March 3rd in 1882. And he was born in a very affluent family, and his forefathers were quite rich, very popular. The Ponzi was a very popular surname in the region, and but when Charles was born, they had no money. Even though his mother used the title of Donna. Donna is baroness, equal to baroness. So her mother can continue to use the title of Donna even though they had no money. So they used to feel very proud about their lineage. And Charles or Carlos was always wanting to, build the past glory of his family, make a lot of money. And because their pedigree is like that, all his friends in his circle were very rich. Although this Ponzi family had become poor, but his friend circle was quite rich. So he had this, sort of a stigma that he has to make money. At the same time, lot of immigrants were going to United States and returning to Italy, having earned a lot of money. So because US was opening the doors so that people can go and make money in the USA. It was a new country being formed, liberal, democratic, etc. So a lot of immigrants went to US. A lot of Italians from his neighborhood came back, and they were actually very rich. So he said, okay, let me also, he was actually thinking about this idea to immigrate to US and make money. His whole idea was to make money. However, because of his lineage, he got an entry into university, but his friend circle was rich brats, so they spent a lot of his money. So whatever savings he got for completing his education, he actually spent along with his friends in wining and dining, and he did not, basically, by the time he his 5th year of university, he had no money. So he was completely out of money, and then whatever little money he left after that, he actually bought a ticket to America over a ship, and he finally arrived in the United States of America on November 15th in the year 1903. And the ship which he boarded was known as SS Vancouver, and he landed in the city of Boston. Boston used to be very hustling and bustling town. There were many, it's a coastal town, as you know, in the US, and there were a lot of immigrants, Italian immigrants in that town, in the Boston region. So he landed on 15th November. However, during the journey from Italy to US, whatever little money he had on the ship itself, he lost all of it in gambling. So, at a young age itself, Charles Ponzi was a very crazy character. He was very loose with money, and he has this idea developing in his mind about how do I make quick money. Otherwise, why anybody who is in dire strait and he's shifting his base, he has no money, he was not able to finish his education. After finishing his education, he had no money, and then he is migrating to US, and during the journey also, he spent all his savings without thinking what he will do when he land in a foreign land. He gambled the entire money that he had. All right, Kanchan, you have a question.
Yes, actually, I just want to know, okay, what is wrong in making money, because everybody here is so inclined to make money, and if Ponzi has a way, so why we are actually discussing, maybe he is the kind of founder of Ponzi schemes, I guess. So what is wrong about that, actually?
Well, there is nothing wrong, but I think there is a right way and a wrong way. So, if you want to basically make money by gambling or by swindling, is definitely wrong, and that is the idea that Ponzi came up with. Even though he belonged to a very affluent family in Italy, he had many friends in United States because a lot of immigrants, as you know, Kanchan, came from Italy into US. And so there were a lot of Italians, there were a lot of Irishmen that formed the modern America. So
But I think there are many people who are still doing the same process, and they are earning money. And new government is giving a check on these kind of people who are taking a wrong way of earning money.
absolutely, the Ponzi schemes, that is why the Ponzi schemes are called Ponzi schemes, simply because these are illegal. However, somebody tries to swindle money. Uh, Government, this is a illegal scheme in most countries, and these con artists are basically put behind bars for conning general public. So definitely, it's illegal. But back in the days, people did not had the understanding of how these schemes or pyramid structure works in a scheme. uh, Today many people know, they don't want fall trap of into such schemes. So finally, let me move back to Charles Ponzi. So he landed, he had only $2.50 in his pocket because he actually lost all his money over the SS Vancouver deck of SS Vancouver. So now what he will do, he had to find jobs in order to survive. So he actually found a lot of odd jobs in Boston area, etc., and nearby areas. Um, when he was actually doing all these odd jobs, sometimes as a waiter, sometimes as a cleaner in a diner, etc. And surprising thing is that he could only speak Italian. But being a smart man and a brainy person, he started picking up English. He started taking up classes, and after some time, he became quite fluent in English. So he knew Italian very well because he was Italian, and he also now, after a few years, knew English. So then he started getting little bit more respectable jobs, as where he can actually interact with people, and so on and so forth. So his elevation happened when he actually became a tender, a bartender in a diner where there is a public interaction. So from back office to front office, and then it took him some time, and that is how his life was. So his dream was to basically immigrate to America to make money, but then he had to basically rebuild his life, and he has to rebuild his name of his family. That was his core idea, and his mother was still in Italy. So finally, he was able to learn English and he was able to start his life.
So what is exactly the Ponzi scheme? Would you like to tell us?
Hold your horses, I'm coming to that. It's very, very interesting. All right. So what happened is, he was Charles Ponzi was actually involved in a small theft, and fearing arrest, he actually um, left America, and he went to neighboring country called Canada, in Montreal, and he thought that he will escape his that small theft for which he was accused, by changing over into a next country. So when he reached Canada, there were a lot of Italian immigrants in Canada also, especially in Montreal region. And he actually, because of his language skills, he could speak Italian fluently, he could speak English fluently. So he got a job in a bank, Banco Zarossi. As from the name, you can see this is a bank meant for Italian people, Italian immigrants. Banco Zarossi in Canada. This is where he found the job, and he started working as a in different frontline jobs uh, in the bank. He was never a manager, a bank manager, but he was a clerk or those kind of jobs where he will talk to the Italian immigrants, convince them to put the money in Banco and open an account, etc., etc. In this job, he was very successful. And back in the days, the bank used to offer only 5% interest. So now he got exposed to the finance. So while after moving into America, he started learning languages. He started dealing with public. He knew how people behave in certain situations, and obviously people want to put their money in the bank, also earn interest. So he started dealing with finance. He learned the new skills of bookkeeping, etc., etc. So what happened is that the bank was offering 5 to 6% interest. However, the bank went under, and because there was a lot of history that the swindling, the owners of the bank actually failed to continue the payback to the investors, and because of that, the entire owners of the bank fled to Mexico. And Charles Ponzi had to fled along with them because he was working with the bank. And if the people approach him, because he was an Italian, and most of the money was kept by the Italian immigrants into the bank. So he fled to Mexico also, and after few days, he returned to Montreal, and he had no money. So Ponzi, unfortunately, never had money with him, and he was always hungry for making money. He was always hungry to become rich, and therefore he always wanted to think of ways of making more and more money. So what happened was, when he returned back to Montreal, he went from door to door finding some jobs, and he actually found his old customers, bank customers, to employ him. But none of them took him back, because his employer, the bank, actually swindled money. So what this guy did, he actually, in one of his clients' place, he found a checkbook lying loosely, and he smartly wrote a check to himself for $423.58, and forged the owner's signature, Damien Furana. He forged this signature, got the money out into his bank account. However, he was caught. Unfortunately, he was caught, and he actually pleaded guilty in front of the court, and he was jailed for the forgery. He was in the bar, and he was behind the bar, and he was thinking about what to do next. But I think this is where he had started. When he was in the jail, he got a lot of time. He started thinking of combining his life knowledge of using multiple language skills, people management skills, and also the knowledge of finance, and also how easy it is to basically make such schemes to take money from people, and then do some sort of rotation. So he was actually scheming when he was jailed for the first time. All right. So this is where it is now getting more interesting. So back in the days, the postal schemes used to carry like postcards. If you remember, there used to be postcards. Especially the current generation may not know what is a postcard. Postcard is a prepaid printed postcard which you can actually purchase in advance, and then send it across to your loved ones. Suppose you're traveling from London to New York, you buy some 10 postcards, and you can send them back by so it is already paid in advance. However, there was another scheme where when you send a post to your client, then you can attach a prepaid reply coupon to that post, so that if the customer wants to respond back to you, to your letter, they don't have to make any payment. Now this was a very popular method back in the days, in the 20s, in the 1919. And So what used to happen is that these reply coupons, international reply coupons, can be obtained from any country for any country. And Charles Ponzi got an idea, and this is the origin of his Ponzi scheme. He got an idea that he can actually make money in arbitrage. Today, the money arbitrage is a real thing. You actually buy certain thing in dollars and sell the same thing in ruble, and you can actually make money because of the cross currency fluctuation and arbitrage. Now, Charles Ponzi got an idea that, look, I can actually start providing these reply coupons in the US, especially from the UK, from London and Italy. And Italy was his home country, so it was very easy for him to buy this coupon. And also, the war had ended. The first war had ended, and in those days there was no internet, so people had no knowledge. So the cost of this international reply coupon (IRC) had reduced in Italy, but people by and large did not have knowledge about that. So Ponzi thought, okay, I can actually start using this IRC as an arbitrage, buy them at X price in Italy, sell them at a higher rate in the US, and then I can make money. So he started doing that, and he started making some money. But since the value of this IRC used to be so small, there was not enough money. So while he was doing this cash flow, he realized that he can actually make more money if he actually is able to buy more IRC. That means if he has more IRCs, international reply coupons, then the amount of money that he can make is more. But he had no money with him. So what is the option? He went around meeting all the banks in Boston area, but none of the banks actually liked his idea and they refused to fund him. So after that, he converted his company. He actually floated a company. He converted his company into a public listed company on the stock exchange. And then he basically convinced people to invest in his company. And he started with his friends that, okay, if you pay me $10, I will pay back so many extra percentage, double your money in so many time. So he was able to convince his friends, few of his friends and family, and got the money invested in his company. And gradually, when people started seeing these returns, the confidence of people grew gradually, and they actually started investing in his company through the security exchange, or his company was listed in the stock market. So this is exactly what his idea. He wanted to play on arbitrage. Basis of arbitrage was the international reply coupons, which he will actually buy in advance from Italy and from UK and sell them, because there were a lot of population immigrants from UK as well as from Italy into United States. They would need to send back some sort of letters back to their family.
Well, you see, Chandrakant, the homo centric are really a marvelous ways, because where there is no opportunity, there are a lot of people who create these opportunities. And when we are talking about Charles Ponzi, he could have done a better, maybe a positive way of earning money, but he has selected a way which itself has become a kind of invention, I can say, or maybe a discovery, a loophole where it was not there, and he has created. So I will say, yes, he has done a job. But yes, you will say that yes, I know it's a negative way of earning, but actually there's something has come out. I will rate him as an intellectual person rather than yes, the background is definitely the outcome is many people say it's wrong, but I will have a really soft corner because I'm putting him in the cadre of intelligent person. He opted and found out an opportunity which was missing. What do you say?
Absolutely. He was, I would like to call him brainy, because he was able to think, and he was also a driven person. He wanted to make money, and he found a loophole, because in those days there was no legal restriction in doing any arbitrage. Today we have laws and bylaws of the Security Exchange Board in all countries, but in those days there was no such thing like that. So he actually utilized a loophole which where people invested money into his company. But what he actually did was very interesting. In fact, you raised a very vital point. I must explain what he actually did. He actually made, by 1920, made 2.5 million people invest in his scheme. So he actually got so much money, which is equivalent to 35 million today. So 2.5 million way back in 1920 got invested in his company overnight, you know. And by July of the same year, he was getting so much money invested in his company. It was almost like $1 million every day. Now, in back in 1920, $1 million was huge sum. You can imagine, 100 years back, $1 million coming to his company was so huge. So the whole idea of launching his company was basically to make money by first buying these IRCs from different countries, bring them by ship, because in those days there was no aeroplanes, etc. Bring them by ship into America, then sell them in America at a higher price, and then so that is a legitimate business. You are actually importing something, selling at a higher price, making money, and then saying that, okay, fine, my investors have invested money in me, I'm going to return so much money to the investors. But since so much money was getting invested into Ponzi, Charles Ponzi realized that he actually there is no need to basically do any of these IRC purchase, because as people say that you take money from Peter and pay it to Pan after 45 days. So this is exactly what he did. He actually paid back, and important thing is that he paid back his money. In order to continue the scheme running, he always paid back the money that he got from which he was due to pay to the investor. But the method he paid his money was, he whatever money which is coming fresh now, he knew that he has now 45 days to pay back this guy. So he used to take that money and pay to the older investor. So this is how he actually rotated the money. So if the Peter has invested in his company in January, in the middle of February, he will actually collect the same money plus profit from John and pay Peter. And that is the scheme that he was running. And that is why this is, the pyramid scheme that we talk about. Today, many people are very concerned about such scheme. There are regulations. The scheme has to be approved by the Securities Exchange if you are a listed company, and also any financial scheme has to be approved by the government of any country. But this is the brainy person, as Kanchan mentioned. He is definitely a brainy person because he was able to find loopholes, and then he actually took one step at a time, finding solutions, and he continued to basically get money, pay back money, and kept doubling the money for his investors. So his fame and his authenticity continued in the public, so much so that nearly 75% of the police department in Boston city invested in his Ponzi scheme. And it's not only people who knew Ponzi. Everybody from mayor to government officials, they actually wanted to double their money, because back in the day the bank was only giving 5% per annum interest rate, and here this is a guy who's actually doubling their money in every 3 months. So a lot of people put behind their money behind Ponzi, and they wanted to double their money. So suddenly Ponzi was actually reliving his dream, childhood dream, to bring back the lost glory of his family. And he also married, and he actually bought the most expensive cars. He moved to the most expensive area. He bought a beautiful house. He started living very comfortable, a rich life. He became the creme de la creme of Boston, and he definitely made a lot of money. Um, people were People became so desperate, they actually started taking loans in order to invest in in Ponzi's company. People started mortgaging their homes, their savings, and they started investing in Ponzi, not only in US but also in Italy and also in UK. So gradually, his scheme within a very short period of time, less than 6 months, became a global rage. They were actually queuing up to invest money so that they can double in 90 days. So that was the scheme, and that is why suddenly, in order to handle so much of influx, he had to open a bigger office, more employees. He actually started a legitimate business, and so on and so forth. So this is how, in today's parlance, if we have to compare this is like a bubble, because you are taking the money from an older investor, from a new investor, paying to the older guy. And at some point in time, you have to start selling. The whole idea of the company was to basically get the arbitrage and make money in actual sense. So there is no arbitrage, because in order to make so much of money so that he can pay back his older investor, the amount of IRCs that Ponzi had to buy would have been equal to a shipload of almost like a huge ship, and that was not needed actually from the standpoint of Ponzi. At the same time, Ponzi never discriminated. He was kind of a democrat. He allowed anyone to invest in his company, right from a few dollars, a person who had only few dollars, to a millionaire, and so that everybody in Boston can start to make money by investing in Ponzi. A lot of banks actually started investing in Ponzi. Believe it or not, the bankers themselves started investing in Ponzi. Uh, Ponzi also tried to acquire a couple of banks, but he failed. However, nearly 30 to 33 banks actually invested in Ponzi, and several of these banks, Ponzi was also appointed as the external director. He actually started investing in these banks in order to recover, because he knew that this is a bubble which he is creating, and one day the bubble will burst and he will not have money to pay back. So he was actually preparing for future, and he wanted to become more legitimate, and therefore he wanted to acquire a bank, or basically he started investing in banks.
So actually, thanks for for taking up this story, because I had no idea about Charles Ponzi, because all this pyramid selling is already done even in India also. But to know, and this is quite a knowledgeable subject, and it is worth discussing about this personality.
Absolutely. And in fact, the story gets more interesting, because when he became rich so suddenly, that is when certain people who were not, who basically suspicion started to rise, and then people started to dig further. And that is what happened to Ponzi. The Ponzi scheme was running nicely, but the whole idea was that he had to basically buy the IRCs, which he never bought. So if he had bought certain international reply coupons, then business would have actually backed his whole idea. But in order to make so much money, because he promised doubling of money in 90 days, to make so much money, he had to actually buy so many IRCs where it was next to impossible also. So from the business standpoint, it was impossible to justify on paper. If some analysts actually start to review how the business is running, how Ponzi company is making money, how they are returning money, how they are doubling, the company will fail on all fundamentals. However, as a legitimate idea, Ponzi never stopped paying back his older investor. He always made the payments on time. So people had faith in him, and therefore new and new investment kept coming to him. However, all this raised certain eyebrows, and especially when the company became very big and the global investment started to come in, people genuinely wanted to know how he's doubling it. It's a curious question that when you're not doing any legitimate business, you're not buying IRCs from UK and Italy, which was your original idea, how you're doubling the money in 90 days, whereas the bank itself is not able to do that. Being a financial institution, they are giving you an interest rate of 6%, and you are giving interest rate of almost 100% in 90 days. Over a period of a year, the interest rate that Ponzi is able to offer is 400%. So obviously people wanted to know what is the magic wand that Ponzi has, how he is making money, and they started digging in. So there were a lot of investigative journalists who actually showed a lot of interest in understanding the method of Ponzi, and they started digging further. And then Bloomberg, which is a finance analyst, they also did their independent study, and what they found was that the Ponzi scheme was not fitting any business fundamental, because the business is all about buying and selling. So if you buy certain thing at X price, sell at X plus Y price, then you have a arbitrage situation. But in this case, Ponzi missed fulfilling his first fundamental of the business, which is IRC. On the basis of his IRC scheme, on the arbitrage, his whole company was based. He never bought an IRC, but he actually kept swindling the money or rotating the money, take the money from the latest investor, pay to the older investor. And this was found out by certain investigative journalists, and they published the article. And that is when this kind of articles were published in the media, people actually started taking money back. And they also found out that Ponzi himself has not invested in his own company, while the entire so many people wanted to invest in Ponzi himself is not doubling his own money. So this was also found out when people started digging in.
Well, that is quite interesting that he himself knew that it is not worth investing for himself, I guess.
That is why this is called a Ponzi scheme. That is why this kind of a scheme was destined to fail. So that is when the collapse was imminent, when the such articles started getting published, and Ponzi tried to save the reputation of his company by suing these journalists and winning the cases also, because the law in the US was that if you have stumbled upon such an article, and if the the person involved here sues you, you have to back it up with some solid evidence. Now, there was no evidence. These journalists did not had evidence, and also the publishing house did not have evidence. Charles Ponzi sued the publishing house, and they got almost $500,000 as damage. But this story, once out, never stopped. One after the other, multiple publishing houses, newspapers started publishing this story. Eventually, a case was registered. Because of this public outcry, the Security Exchange Board, SEC, in the United States was forced to conduct their own independent inquiry, and they found that the fundamentals of business are not strong in this Ponzi, the way the Ponzi is making money, and therefore he is actually running a scheme. He is not running a business, he is actually running a scheme. And then SEC actually filed a case on him, and he had to plead guilty. Now, he was put behind bars. He tried to do a lot of things to come out of the jail. He tried to bribe people, but none of this actually worked. And he had to plead guilty. He was fined, and he was actually sentenced for life. And in the multiple accounts. So you can imagine that once Charles Ponzi was put behind bars, he is not coming out. However, he kept applying for bail. After 7 years, he was given bail. And while he was in jail, his company collapsed. Obviously, there was nobody to control the money flow. And that is when people realized the amount of loss, this global loss, this company caused to not only United States, but to other countries also. And some people say that his company was the first known written bubble burst at the financial stock market in 1920, and that is probably the cause of the slowdown of or the big depression which was caused in the United States. So the impact of Ponzi was such great, and therefore the implication was also huge. The amount of money which was swindled by Ponzi was $20 million, which is almost equal to $207 million in 2021. So much money was lost because of this particular scheme. So in the end, we learn the lesson. We learn the lessons. We tighten the laws. We form new regulations, and we today, in today's time, somebody says that I will double your money. We don't trust that person at all. And this is also using the pyramid or some sort of chain business strategy, which we do not believe today. Most of the government do not allow such schemes to function in a legitimate manner. Business must have a fundamental, and Ponzi found a loophole. He paid the price. After this scheme, he was granted bail after 7 years, but he was not allowed to stay in United States because he was sentenced for life for duping money, for basically making people pauper overnight. You remember I told you that people had actually mortgaged their houses to invest in Ponzi. So they became poor overnight, and so many big people lost so much money. So he could not stay, and whenever he used to be taken out of the jail, he was always surrounded by a lot of angry mobs. So he could not stay out as a free man in the United States. So when the bail petition was finally approved for him, he was deported back to Italy, and his wife divorced him because his wife was an Italian immigrant, but she was born in US, so there was no way Ponzi would have been able to support her in Italy. So she didn't want to go to Italy. She wanted to stay in US. So she divorced Charles Ponzi, and Rose was the name of the wife. She stayed back in US. Ponzi reached Italy. He was a disgraced man. He did not get any job. He tried running different schemes, but none of his schemes were successful because he became so infamous. By the time, nobody believed him. So even though if he came out with a legitimate idea, nobody believed him. Finally, he immigrated to Brazil. He never made any money. He actually wrote a book about himself during his old age, and he never had money after that. He had a very low salary income in Brazil. Finally, he passed away in Rio de Janeiro in a very poor conditions. So friends, my idea was to tell you how people became rich by finding loopholes. And as people say that whenever there is a new scheme or a mutual fund or any kind of financial schemes, be very careful. People don't read those fine prints. You have to read the fine prints. You have to do analysis of where you are spending your money or investing your money, whether this money is going to give you the return that the scheme is offering, because Ponzi has such a profound impact on our financial world that most of the government had to change their policies. So do let me know if you like this subject. This is historic reflection. You are watching Akulmach. My name is Chandrakant. I will catch you in the next one. If you have any question, do send in your comments. So as always, thanks for watching. Bye bye and have a nice weekend.